And I tell you what, even though I graduated many, many years ago, every single time Bill taught the color wheel using icing, he texted me and just said, thank you. And that's Bill, right? That's exactly the type of person who Bill is, because he's not dead. So I'm not going to say Bill was.
Hello, and welcome to Theater Thursdays. I'm Amber Williams, and I'm coming to you from Knoxville, Tennessee, the native lands of the Yuchi, Muskogee Creek, and Cherokee Nations. I work at the Clarence Brown Theater as a senior costumer and a wardrobe supervisor, and I'm here today with Nikki, Erin, Eric, and Kathryn. Hi.
Hi.
We're going to talk today about Bill Black, who is retiring after 44 years at the Clarence Brown, and we have talked a little bit about his amazing artistry as a costume designer, but today we wanted to focus on his role as an educator. So, Nikki, you had an interesting experience with your first main stage production. Can you tell us a little bit more about how Bill helped you with that?
My name is Nicky Smith, and my pronouns are she and hers. I'm currently leveling up to TV and film costume designer from assistant designer. I'm remote officing in Miami, Florida, living on the land of the original Tequesta people, which is now the land belonging to the Seminole people of the Miccosukee branch. I had the wonderful pleasure of having Bill work with me on my second year show, which was All the Way Home, written by James Agee. And as some of you may know, it's a local story, very evocative of what Knoxville was around the turn of the century, early 1900s. And Bill offered to make the two beautiful looks for Carol Mayo Jenkins, who played the aunt. And because of the period, it was kind of Gibson Girl-esque, and Bill was fabulous in fittings. Just watching him make sure the proportions were correct, make sure that Carol was heard and that she felt comfortable in her clothes. And even when I brought Bill my sketches, we sat down with the fabrics and really figured out what was the most cost-effective and easy combination to accommodate the Bill, but to still keep my designs true and authentic. And just being in a fitting with Bill really taught me to be aware of detail and that the costume needs to look good from all angles, because people move on all angles of the stage. And it's something that I carry with me into design meetings. It's something that I carry with me into every project that I do as an assistant or a lead designer.
Yes, I think that Bill's approach, his very practical approach to design, has just helped countless students going forward. So, Erin, you worked with Bill as a graduate assistant in the classroom. So what kinds of, how did that help you? What did you learn from that?
Yeah, absolutely. My name's Erin. I use she, her pronouns. I'm coming to you from Knoxville, Tennessee, as Amber said, the native lands of the Cherokee, Yuchi, and Muskogee Creek people. I'm currently a freelance costume designer and technician. I spent several semesters TAing for Bill, and I was just so impressed with Bill's ability to really engage with the students and create meaningful and impactful experiences for everyone who was in his class, whether they were going to continue on in costume design or not. He really did a great job of, making costume design relatable and interesting, and really kind of meeting students where they were, but also pushing them to be, even more engaged and even more kind of, even better at what they were doing than they thought they could be. And as someone who wanted to go into education, I really felt like he was both educating the undergrads in that class, but also educating me as to what I really wanted to be when I was teaching as well. So I just really appreciated, getting to watch Bill work and getting to kind of turn around and do my best to emulate the way Bill taught when I was teaching as well.
Yes, I think that Bill, he was always honing that class. It changed so many times over the year, and I think that every year he was trying to always do it a little bit better. So Eric, you were also a graduate assistant and you taught with him. So can you tell us some more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. First, I'll say that I'm Eric Abele. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm calling in from the unceded territory of the Piscataway, Conoy, and Susquehanna people colonized as Baltimore, Maryland. I'm in my 7th year as a senior lecturer of costume design at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. And let me tell you something I've learned in 7 years, and that is once you figure out a class, you're not really somebody who wants to change it all the time, right? Because you've got something that works, it's easily repeatable, you kind of have more predictable outcomes. But when I started TAing for Bill, which was, I think, within my first year, I, of course, showed up as a pretentious youth, to borrow a term from Nikki, and I had all these ideas. I'm like, oh, Bill, what if we do it this way? And what if we do this? And Bill was so gentle and compassionate that he sort of said, yeah, let's see what that looks like. And me being me, I went home and I completely redid the syllabus and I brought it back to him the next day. And he's like, yeah, this looks good. Let's try it out. I was such a pretentious youth. I'm a pretentious adult too, but that's another story. And I think what was so stunning is that that level of trust and collegiality he had with me helped me feel like, wow, I'm a teacher too. Like, I can really do this, can't I? And anytime I taught, which he let me teach quite freely, quite often, he would always provide the most gentle but corrective feedback if any were needed. And I felt like I grew so much assisting him. I don't know, maybe like 5-6 times. Who knows? It's been so long.
Yes, I think that what's amazing is the things that you did that he still does today. I know of at least 2 or 3 things that you added in that class.
You know, that color mixing
coloring the
exercise
frosting.
with icing,
Doing
which was a weird idea. Let's be honest. I did that in 4th grade, and I always kept that in my head of like, that would be a great way to do color. And so here I was, a graduate student, be like, hey, I did this thing in 4th grade. Do you think we could try it? And of course, Bill's like, yeah, let's try it out.
I think
he went and got all the supplies. Oh my gosh.
It just proves that what works in 4th grade also works in college. So
100%.
It is the best class. Everyone loves that one.
Do you know, to this day, he still texts me every time he teaches it.
I love that. So Kathryn, you worked with Bill as a draper. You were here as an undergrad, and then you have experience with working with him professionally. So what kind of things did you learn from that experience?
Hi, I'm Kathryn Rohe. I'm the costume design professor at Ball State University in Muncie, Indiana, home of the Miami, Kickapoo, and Lenape tribes. And I graduated from the University of Tennessee with my BA in 1981. And I worked for Bill on 5 shows afterwards, a couple years after I graduated, 2 at Three Rivers Shakespeare Festival in Pittsburgh and 3 at the Utah Shakespeare Festival. And I learned so much, just like what Nikki was describing, watching him in action, in a fitting, making sure every detail was correct and making huge decisions on the fly, just instantaneously, and being really good at solving problems. And one memory I have is how he was so good with his actors and actresses. And he had one leading lady on one of these shows that made his job harder. She just had a lot of requests that were challenging. And he continued to meet them and tried to help her feel like she was getting what she needed to do her job. And as we got nearer to opening night, her anxiety was increasing, and it was becoming harder and harder to take care of her. And at one point I said to him, Bill, I just don't think what you're doing is working with her. And he said to me, how do you think she would be feeling if I hadn't done all these things? And it was such a good lesson for me to learn about how to care for your actor and actresses.
Yeah, I think that what I get from all these conversations is that Bill is he's a practical designer, he's an empathetic designer, he's a collaborator, and he fixes problems. He's such an amazing person. He has helped us so much. And we've learned, all of us, including myself, I've known him since the early 90s, and he has been pivotal in my career. But Bill is amazing. And do you have any Billisms that you'd like to tell us?
Who doesn't have Billisms? Oh my gosh, the list of Billisms, from context is everything, to it's just a skit. Or my favorite is when he would yell at the NPR station that we always played in the craft room, and if they would say Joseph Haydn, he would scream at the radio and say, his name is Joseph, every single time. But I think the thing that always sticks with me about Bill is how he would quote random Shakespeare quotations every now and then. It would be a response to a conversation or, again, something he heard on NPR. And so he would very proudly put on his Bill voice and be like, the lady doth protest too much. What play is that from? And I realized early on he was deadly serious. So I, of course, being me, would always say Harry Potter. And just to get him a little riled up.
Pretentious youth.
Well, yeah, like I owned it. I owned it. Yeah, and my favorite part was I still think it took him about a year to realize I was kidding as well, and then it became kind of a fun joke. But dang, if you didn't also feel good if you actually knew what Shakespeare quote he was quoting, that always made me feel like a smart person.
It's like win of the quiz of the day.
Yeah.
What about you, Kathryn?
I don't have a favorite Billism so much as I just can't help remembering something he said to me once at a conference, and it still brings me joy when I think about it today. I still giggle. I had a role and responsibilities. I was a young professor, and it was a new role at this conference. I didn't quite know what I was doing, and I must have been expressing some concern to him. And he said to me, don't worry, if you make a mistake, someone will let you know. And it made me laugh. He handled it with such humor, and it was a great way to assure a younger mentee that we all make mistakes. We're all new at this. We're all trying to figure out what we're doing on the fly. Don't worry too much. It's not going to be the end of the world if you make a mistake. And I just
but to be fair, Kathryn, to be fair, wasn't Bill usually the person who would be the first to point out a mistake? Like you would be, all y'all know, we would be sewing in the costume shop, and suddenly this head would appear right here. Like, you're not going to do it like that, are you?
The appearing head, absolutely.
Well, I would say, like, with the appearing head, I remember I once presented designs to Bill that had navy blue shoes, and he told me those don't exist. It's either black or brown, pick one. And that was part of Bill's humor. Like, he was a funny guy. And I remember also in my second year, I think that's when Bill started to grow out his hair. And Bill had a beautiful head of curly hair, which he would also remind us that when he was a child, he was a very beautiful child. And he had these beautiful curls. And as they got longer, when he would bend down to cut, he'd be like, oh, my hair's in my face. And he had the most beautiful black dainty headband that he would put in his hair and pull it back so his hair wouldn't be in his face when he cut, draped, drew. And that was just part of Bill's humor. Like, we got to work with him as an educator and as an artist, but also as a colleague and someone that would make us laugh and would find the humor in situations where, in grad school, it can get a little intense.
Oh, yeah. Everyone nods.
Yeah.
I definitely have a favorite Billism, but I was just thinking in preparation for this about the first time Bill and I met. And it was like the worst possible meeting. We were at a party at Mary Ann's house, and Bill had come back late for the school year from Utah. He must have been designing the late show there. So I hadn't met him yet as a sweet, young, innocent little first year grad student. And one of the third years, kind of pulled him over and was like, hey, Bill, this is Erin. She's also from Missouri. And I do love my home state, and I'm always enthusiastic to meet people from Missouri. And I said, oh my gosh, hi, Bill Black. I've heard so much about you. I'm from St. Louis. And he said, okay, and just walked away. That was all he said. And I remember being absolutely mortified that my next 3 years were going to be colored by this miserable first impression I made. And thankfully that was not the case. And we talk a lot about Missouri now with, much more enthusiasm. But it was just such a great first impression. Everybody really started off on a swell foot. So I'm glad we turned it around. But I do think my favorite Billism is design is choosing. I love it so much. I embroidered it just so I could always have a physical reminder of Bill Black saying, design is choosing. And that's been so important to me as, you know, a starting out freelance costume designer, going around doing these modern dress shows with budgets of like, you know, $2 and a couple pennies, trying to thrift a show worth of clothes. And you're staring at the rack between these two sad pairs of blue jeans. Like, I'm not a designer. I'm just here picking blue jeans. I'm a glorified personal shopper. And then I would always think of Bill, you know, telling me design is choosing. You're at least choosing one of those two blue jeans. So, you know, that still makes you a designer. And that always made me feel a little bit better and a little bit smarter as I was sitting there in that thrift store trying to pick a pair of blue jeans for my poor actor. So I thank Bill every day for making me feel more like a designer even when I didn't.
Not even more like a designer. You are a designer. Even when you're choosing.
Exactly.
Don't sew or draw a stitch of anything, but you just buy everything.
Just choose.
It is design. It is still design. Well, thank you all so much for coming. It's been great.
Thank you for having us.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
It's been great.
It's been awesome. And thank you, everyone at the CBT family. And we hope to see you again. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.